To start off, could you briefly introduce yourself, including your name, age, position, and your background in psychology?
Okay. So yeah, my name is Daryl, Daryl Tan. I'm from Malaysia, Malacca. So I'm 32 this year. Um, in terms of background, I have a master's in counseling. So I'm a licensed and registered counselor. So I run my own center in Malacca, Oasis Center, and also I'm a part-time lecturer in Taylor's. Can I pause for a while? How did you find me? Actually, how did you reach out to me on Teams?
Through my friends, because
Okay.
yeah, he is your student.
Okay, understand. Okay, so that's about me lah. I lecture part-time in Taylor's, and I'm also a full-time counselor, and I run my own practice in Malacca. Mm.
Okay. In recent years, have you noticed a growing interest in MBTI among Generation Z?
Yes, I think it's getting very popular, and it's quite well known, especially among Gen Z. Mm.
Generation Z often use MBTI in social situations. What is your opinion on this phenomenon?
I think number one, it's fun. It's a fun personality test to do, and generally, I think it's quite interesting the results people get. So maybe to answer the question even more directly, what's my opinion? I think at some level it's healthy because people are understanding that people are different and it's quite organized. However, being maybe I didn't share, but I'm also doing my PhD in counseling, and my main research is on personality. Uh, so my point here is that MBTI is not the most reliable or scientific based tool. So that's my opinion. It's fun, interesting, but at the same time, maybe not the most valid and reliable long term.
So, what role do you think social media platforms like Instagram or TikTok have played in the popularity of MBTI? Do you see this influence as positive or negative?
So there's two questions there. Maybe the first question to answer that. Yeah, I think social media definitely increases its usage of MBTI simply because it's simple to understand. Because there are only 16 types of letters, ENTJ. I see quite a lot of my students in their Instagram, or not my students, some of my friends in the Instagram, they have like in their caption ENTJ, INTP. So once you put it in, oh, you can kind of guess their personality. So yeah, I think the way MBTI is structured, where it's quite direct, simple, and only 16, it makes it easy to popularize it through social media. Uh, but again, is it a good or bad trend? If you ask me personally, I think in the short term it could be interesting. But in the long term, I don't see much long term benefit to it because I think in your following questions you will ask, it sometimes box people in like ENTJ or like that, INTP or like that. So I don't know whether that classification of people to 16 types only are actually helpful long term. So yeah,
So, from a psychological perspective, do you think MBTI is scientific and reliable?
the simple answer will be no, because to understand or to answer this question properly, someone has to understand how it started. So MBTI is based on a lot of Jungian theory, the extroversion, introversion. So it's based on theory, not so much data. So I'm using a lot of Big Five. Big Five is generally more scientific in terms of data analysis. It's more reliable and valid long term. So anyway, to answer the question simply, uh, there is truth, or at least there's some utility to the data, but is it scientific? I would say no. Mm.
Do you think MBTI might lead people to fall into self-limiting labels or boxed-in personality frameworks?
Yes, yes. I think the simple answer is yes. Again, because of how structured it is or how classified it is, the temptation or the proclivity is there to box people in or to box themselves in. So yeah.
compared to other personality tests like the Big Five or the Enneagram? What do you think are MBTI strengths and limitations?
So again, my whole research, my whole counseling direction is based on Big Five a lot. So I think Big Five is the most scientific and reliable tool when it comes to personality management. But going back to the question, MBTI strength is how easy it is to understand it. It's easy to understand. That helps people use it more. And also it is, how do I say this? Uh, MBTI teaches people that people are different, and that's a good thing. So it's important to know that people differ in terms of temperament. One setback or one maybe disadvantage of MBTI is that uh, there's no there's no performance indicator based on the results. What do I mean? Based on your code, there's no supporting evidence whether you'll be successful or what are your long term success rate. For example, like if a big five, if you're high conscientious, you know that you may be good at management or overall success is higher. But anyway, to keep it simple, the strengths of MBTI is that it teaches people that people are different, which is a good thing. The setback is that there's no long-term uses of it that's valid.
So,
Mm.
in your teaching experience, have you come across students who are particularly enthusiastic about MBTI? What kind of impact has it had on them?
Yeah, it's popular, and almost all my students know about MBTI. So that kind of means it's very widely used. And sorry, Sri, can you repeat the last question? The last part of that question? What is it?
Sure. What kind of impact has it on them?
Mm. So again, I think similar to what I've been sharing, the impact, there is good and bad, obviously. The good is that people are interested to know about themselves. They're interested to know about other people. MBTI, maybe I didn't share, but MBTI is good when it comes to communication. So I think that's its main use is that if you're ENTJ, INTP, you know how to maybe communicate better to one another. So that's the good thing about it. But again, going back to what you said earlier, or what you proposed, sometimes there's a temptation to just box people in. So, and so basically they label themselves prematurely, lah, which is not the best thing. Labels are not very helpful.
In education or psychological counseling, do you think MBTI can be used as a supportive tool to better understand students?
Generally, yes, it can be used. Uh, so I think the answer is yes, because if the goal is to understand, uh, kinda, it does help you understand the student a bit better. But again, I'm maybe as a practicing counselor, uh, MBTI can be quite narrowing for students and also clients. They're like, oh, I'm ENTJ, like that. This is how I am. And that's not very helpful to help someone because people get a fixed mindset, which is quite difficult to break through.
The last question, what advice would you give to people who relate too heavily on MBTI to define themselves?
So I think the first step is to not define yourself using MBTI. I think MBTI has a lot of uses which can be which can be used. So I think if you want to, for someone who is, give me 1 second, please. Let me just mute my phone. 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, so back to what I was saying. To answer the question, yes, MBTI can be helpful and it can be used to, it can be used, but not to define yourself, but to give you some increased understanding of who or your temperament is. That's as much as it's used, meaning like from your results, like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So this is maybe how I think, how I behave, and how I feel. But at the same time, these labels should not be labels. They should just be information. Very different. Labels means I'm that information. Like, oh, that's interesting, because I think I also teach MBTI courses. So one key thing about MBTI is that, at least one key thing about personality studies. These are all, in some sense, information. But based on this information, how do you expand yourself? How do you how do you develop your personality across time? Meaning, like, if you're introverted, how do you develop extroversion skills? If you're sensing, if you're sensing, how do you develop intuition perspectives? So it's all about information, but information that should help you become better, not information that should label you as a stationary force. Yeah, I think that's my answer.
Thank you very much, sir.